How would you feel about a law that requires people over the age of 70 to pass a specialized driving test in order to continue driving? I was 17 when I took the vision test for my license. The guy doing the vision test had me look into a little box and ask me which of these signs is farthest away. I have no vision issues of any kind and great depth perception, but for the life of me I couldn't tell. I answered him honestly, if sarcastically, and said, I don't know, they're all about 10 inches away in a wooden box. All he said was "you-ha," and passed me. He probably just thought I was some asshole kid, but he didn't do anything to follow up me saying, very clearly, that I couldn't tell. That's a great idea. I'm going to call my 68-year-old congressman and ask him to support such legislation. Edit. Most driving laws are passed by state legislators, who usually do drive themselves. You just made it all make sense. Younger voters are afraid to drive to the polls, lest they be hit by old farts in big cars careening down the road to cast their ballot. Maybe some are even being killed before reaching the polls too, reducing the number of younger voters further. You want more sense? Many old people at that age are retired and have all the time in the world to follow politics and get to the polling booth, whereas younger people are too busy with work, school, and relationships to think about that stuff, let alone participate. Old retired guy here. 74 years old to be precise. I would accept such a test, provided it was only to catch really age-related diseases, dementia, poor reflexes, etc. I live in a retirement community and most of the people who should not have a license have already given them up. The first day I was here I heard a conversation between two guys. Guy 1, I just turned 88 and turned in my driver's license. Guy 2, why would you do that? Guy 1, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in jail. I live in South Florida, Boca area, and am an attorney. Many clients are in retirement communities. I always insist on driving to them. I've only lived here a little over a year. I've witnessed on multiple occasions people driving motorized wheelchairs on 6-lane roads. I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' retirement community's pool. One particular shocker was overhearing a woman say she was driving around and no longer taking her anti-seizure medication. Several residents sold their cars and bought golf carts and could get around easily that way. Edit to at, my grandmother ended up bumping into several buildings and another car before deciding to sell her car. But she won't give up her license, just in case she decided to take a taxi to a dealership that would gladly sell her a car. In Australia I had a seizure during surgery and had my license suspended. I had to wait 3 months and have several tests before they decided there was nothing wrong with me. It then took them another month before the paperwork was done for me to drive again. It sucked. Yeah, my grandfather gave up his license. He was around 70 years old. He said he was driving home one day, looked around and realized he had no idea where he was. He parked his car, called my mom to come pick him up, and stopped driving then and there. The problem is the US is terrible for people without a car. Rural areas have awful transit options and everything is spread so far apart. Car-oriented design has ruined American cities. Australia is the same. Very difficult to get around at all without a car outside of the major cities, and even in them, it can be difficult depending where you live. Doing your grocery shopping, attending doctor's appointments, getting to work, visiting friends and family, all almost impossible without your own car. And if you're looking for work and you don't have your license, don't even bother applying. Let me say this about that. The neighbor I love is 93 and still driving. When she's up to it, she can barely see the on/off switch on her vacuum cleaner. Should she be driving? I want her to maintain independence, but at the same time, I don't think it's safe for her or others. Yet the DMV doesn't require her to take a vision exam or a competency test. Ugh, please. My grandma is practically blind and went to take her driving vision test to renew her license. She failed, but the lady at the DMV felt bad, so she had her take it again and gave her hints so she could pass it. So now my practically blind grandma is out on the road still. It's for their safety as much as anyone else's. I'm so mad that the lady at the DMV was so irresponsible as to let her keep driving. I know of someone, north of 80 years old, who had horrible cataracts, had refused to visit an optometrist for years, and was not fit to drive. They avoided eye examinations because they knew they would have their license taken. When they finally went to get a cataract surgery scheduled, their doctor told them that if they agreed not to drive until after the surgery and after their eyes healed, they would not have their license taken. Legally, they can drive and plan to, but holy fuck, they should not be anywhere near a road. I'm all for a testing because it would catch shit like that. Witnessed a 90-plus-year-old lady killed a 70-plus-year-old lady in a parking lot and injured her husband. People were screaming stop to the driver when she slowly backed the car, knocked down the couple, and ran them over, but she couldn't hear anything. I was traumatized. I just looked it up for the US. I found a 2012 report 16 to 19 has the highest number of accidents, and then the rate decreases until 70. From 70 on, the rate of accidents start increasing again, but they never get back to the 16 to 19-year-old rate. 70 seems a little young these days. I have a neighbor that I fish with at least once a week. He drives his truck, towing a bass boat, without issue, and he's 71 or maybe 72. Of course maybe he's the exception. But I can see a test for people of a certain age. I'm just not sure what age I'd make the law. Maybe 75. My chick's 86-year-old grandmother drives, but she keeps it to daytime hours during clear weather and stays within about a 5-mile radius in our small town. Grocery store, pharmacy, post office, doctor appointments/vet visits, etc. She's not had an accident, but I could understand a driving test for her. Really though, her understanding her limitations keeps things safe for her and others. It's such an individual scenario, but I guess we'd have to draw a line somewhere. I think older drivers definitely need to be retested and have restrictions put on their licenses to driving at night, driving only within certain distances of the home, driving above certain speeds, etc. up to and including revocation if found to be impaired to significant degree. And I'm staring down 70 myself. In Japan, they have special decals that identify new drivers and the elderly, which I think is a good thing. If you see someone with an elderly tag, you might not assume that driver sees everything you do or reacts as quickly as you do. I had trouble getting my dad to quit driving because I knew he couldn't see. He couldn't tell me from my daughter from across the room. I called the DMV for suggestions and they sent him a letter to come in for a vision test. He passed. He was in his 90s with cataracts and dementia. We had a lot of rancor over this issue and he ended up living with my brother whom he would actually listen to, and he quit driving. I'm 66. I'm totally okay with requiring frequent driving tests for those of us over 65 even. I know my mother really wanted to drive beyond 85, but she was hard of hearing and cruising into Alzheimer's. That was not going to happen, and we made other arrangements. But what do you mean by specialized? Tell me more. Should age be the only defining factor? What about diagnosis or arrest record? Any event indicating altered judgment? Let's talk about stroke, nicotine addiction, alcoholism, depression, heart failure, hypertension, opioid addiction, suicidal ideation. I don't believe that it should only be for people over the age of 70. I think that drivers of all ages suck. On that note, I think that all drivers should need to retest when they renew their licenses. In my state, this is every 6 years. I'm assuming normal renewal timing, unlike states like Arizona who basically never fucking expire. My hypothesis is that traffic accidents and fatalities will be reduced due to the increased awareness brought about by frequent testing. I have no way to test this hypothesis. As someone who works in a parking lot constantly and is almost hit by elderly drivers daily, I wish for that more than anything. The elderly drivers that frequent my store regularly neglect their turn signals, nearly run into crowds of people directly in front of them, and almost always cause accidents when backing out. Many don't have full use of their senses, so they should not be allowed to drive. No amount of excuses makes up for that massive safety risk. It's a great idea, but I think in addition, it needs to be paired with some sort of improvements to the DMV system, so it wouldn't create a giant backlog when implemented, more staffing, etc. The wait at the DMV is already unbearable and it already needs some sort of intervention. But I do agree with this test idea. Or maybe just a test done at the doctor's office. Vision, response time, etc. They would be better suited for an evaluation of whether it is safe for this person to drive. Absolutely. I got hit at an intersection by some 90-year-old man driving out of the liquor store and almost died after another car nearly crushed my head in the other lane. Please, for the love of God, take old people off the streets if they can't drive. I've just had to tell my mother, 68, that she can't drive anymore due to early onset dementia and other medical issues which prevent her from safely operating a car. She lives in South Africa where as far as I know they don't have mandatory retesting. It was a horrendous conversation, which I've had to repeat a few times over the last few weeks, but absolutely necessary. If you are in a position where an elderly relative is potentially unsafe on the road, but they are still driving, you are absolutely right to say to them they should not be driving, and then help them find alternative ways to get around town. In my mother's case, a carer who meets her once a week at her retirement village and takes an Uber with her to the shops. It is tough to do, but it is tough love and good not only for your relative's sake, but also for other users on the road. Thanks for watching this video. If you already subscribed, thank you very much. Public daily new videos, you can check previous videos.